Hi everyone, I hope you are all well. Welcome to a very wet and dingy and what I would refer to as minging weather day here in the south of England. We've been having some crazy weather over the past 2 weeks since I've been away. Away as in from my YouTube channel, I haven't been away. We have had heat waves, we've had thunderstorms, we've got this weird hybrid of like every hour it keeps on changing its mind. It's just, been a bit crazy, and work's been crazy, and the book I've been reading over the past 2 weeks has been a crazy roller coaster. So if I had to define these 2 weeks where I have been away, it would be crazy. It is so horrible outside. I have got all my curtains, blinds, everything open in the house. I've got my lamp on and my main lights in my living room, and it still is not quite great. But we'll just have to cope with it. The sun is hidden behind all of the thick rain clouds, so fingers crossed when I go out later to mum and dad's for lunch, I will not get soaking wet. But given what it's been like over the past couple of weeks, I think the only way I will not get wet is if my dad comes over and picks me up. But anyway, enough about the weather and craziness. I'm here to talk about the book I've been reading over the past 2 weeks, which is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Now, this is a debut novel, and I got referred to it by my sister. She read it last year, I think. Oh, no, strike that. It was earlier this year. I think it might have been right near the beginning of the year, or just maybe about February time. I can't remember. And she was like, oh my God, about this book. So I said, look, buy it for my birthday in June and I'll read it. So she did. And our bestie, Sarah, hi Sarah, if you're watching this, she got a copy as well, and she started reading it at the same time as me. That she was able to get through it in, I think, about a week. But for me, it was a tough book. So I gave myself 2 weeks because I was like, I'm not going to pressure myself to do this, to get through this book. And I could have not finished it, but I've had a few books this year where I have not finished. And I was like, no, this is a really important book. So I'm going to take my time with this. I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to take my time. And that is the approach I took. And that is what happened. So in case you haven't heard of this book or you don't know what it's about, My Dark Vanessa is set it's prominently in 2017 when a girl called Vanessa Y finds out that historical sexual assault allegations are being made against her English teacher. This English teacher began teaching her when she was 15, and they began a sexual affair. But she believed, and still does, that it was pure love. It wasn't abuse, it was pure love, so it was fine. But then with these allegations are coming, and a journalist wants to talk to her about it and other things that happen, she begins reflecting back on the whole affair and ponders, was it love? So that's your overall basic synopsis of it. It kind of alternates chapters, but chapters vary from being about 10 pages to being 30 pages, or 30 plus pages. I think right near the end, the penultimate chapter is about 40. And it goes back. 2017 is our main year, as it were. When she's an adult, it's 17 years later, and so it keeps flicking back and forth between early 2000s and such, and tells you what happened. And it's one of these books. It's like The Handmaid's Tale. I am so glad I read it. I am so glad I got through it. But my God, was it a hell of a journey. And I finished it yesterday, sort of around 2ish in the afternoon. And I still can't get over what I'm feeling. My sister took about a week, I think, she said, to get through all of her thoughts on it. And I think Sarah was about the same as well. But I'm fresh in this area, so I'm not over this book yet, and I'm not going to be for a while. I can feel it. This is a sits in your gut for a long time, achy feeling, and I kind of had that feeling whilst reading it. But I want to make this clear. It wasn't an ache of I don't want to, I can't touch it, no, I'm getting away from it. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was an ache of, this happens to thousands, millions of people throughout the world, no matter what gender, and it's heartbreaking. It's utterly heartbreaking. And for me to stop reading, I think would be bad for me to do. Obviously, everybody's an individual. If you can't read this book and you feel you have to stop. But for me, I was like, no, I can do this. It's just going to take me time to get through it. So that's why I gave myself the 2 weeks, and I'm so glad that I did, because this is a subject that, as on the back, there is a quote by the Observer that says, "Superb, a book that asks, what have we lost and gained in an era that has revolutionized the way in which we think and talk about sex and power?" And it is so spot on. We, as a human race, recognize, rape is wrong. Rape can happen to any gender, any age, and everything. We're open to get help. We get constant messages of how to find help and such in these areas, but at the same time, it's like we don't want to acknowledge it. And this book brings it right up to your face, just in a way, kind of like Handmaid's Tale does. And there are some really deep conversations in this book which are so well written and constructed. I can't help but applaud Kate for how she approached this. That question of where is the line between consent and rape? Questions of, like, Vanessa believes when 15 years old that it was true love. So she consented to it. But did she consent to it? That's all of these questions get asked. And Kate has approached this with such respect. I really think she should get true praise for approaching this, and especially as a first novel. Wow. My sister was talking to me after, and Sarah was talking to me after I finished this book yesterday, and my sister said that Kate took 20 years to write this book, because she needed that span of seeing things when you're young and seeing the exact same things later on as an adult, and how your perspective changes on seeing something in two different times in your life. So she did that, where she took 20 years to write this book, and my God, you can tell she did. You see Vanessa's growth, and sometimes her growth is frustrating, because you're like, I was like, girl, look, look at this, please look at this and see it for what it is. And at times she can't do that because she's blinded by this manipulation that happened to her. And there's this stunning moment near the end of the book. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but it's the moment where things click. And she asks this question about her belief system and what it was, and how, if you think about it, it's 17 years later since it began. She was 15 years old when it started. And she says, this has been my life. How can I break an entire belief system that my life has been constructed on? That has been the compass that has pointed me in the direction that I've gone. How can I now turn a different direction? It's so powerful. And Stephen King, his the quote at top here says, a package of dynamite. And my God, it is. It truly, truly is. When I say that this book is harrowing, I'm not saying that lightly. You get all of Vanessa's thoughts, all her feelings. It's up close and personal in every possible way. And so you will be in situations, witness it as you read, obviously, that you don't want to be. Situations that are very private, that you don't want to be witness to. Thoughts that will make you frustrated, thoughts that will make you happy, thoughts that will make you cry and such. But it's important to go through those in this story. So that's why I feel very, very prominently that I had to get through it. I couldn't just put this aside, because this is a subject that deserves our attention. It deserves to be written about. It deserves to show how easily you can be manipulated. And to do that as a debut novel, that takes some guts. That takes real guts. And for the publishers to take it on and publish that takes guts as well. So well done to the publishers, for the state, to publish this, for Kate to write this. I really do want to point out that because you get graphic stuff and because of the subject matter, I would class it as a trigger book. That because it is a trigger book, because of the events that happen, I would be very, very, very surprised if it gets picked up for an adaptation at all, because of the sensitive nature of it. There's no way that you could create an adaptation of this without, in a way, causing harm to individuals who have experienced this kind of situation. I'm not saying that there should never be an adaptation of this kind of story ever, because people don't necessarily read the books, but they watch films and they can learn and they can get support and such. So I'm not saying you should never have rape as the key subject of a film and such. but because of the particular things that happen in this book and the way in which it has been written, and obviously it is the scenes that would be in the film, it would be extremely difficult to adapt. So that's why I would be very surprised if it did get adapted. If there was a way in which they found to tell this story with the utmost respect to anyone who in their audience who has ever been through this kind of thing, and utmost respect to the material and such, then great, bravo, go for it. Use, create a film, use it as a teaching source, great. I just think it would be very, very difficult in the case of what happens in this story. I also want to mention that even though I said it's this deep kind of gut ache feeling whilst reading this book, there's some shining moments of things of such beautiful, simplistic elements of ordinary life that just made me smile, like her relationship with her family dog, which sounds like nothing, but it's a big fucking deal for her. And the fact that with the ending as well, I'm not going to say how it ends, anything like that, don't worry, I'm not, because I don't do that in my reviews, unless I'm ranting about it. The ending, I see it, just like my sister said yesterday, it's not sad. It still has that gut weight to it because of the nature of the book. But it's not a defeat, it's not sadness, it's taking that first steps of moving on, stepping into the light, starting on a new path, and it's fucking dark and it's fucking scary. But it's just one step, and that one step will lead to another. And another and another and so on. And it's Vanessa taking her step through the darkness into the light. And so I see it as a complete victory, the ending. I'm in awe of this book. I loved the little things, like non-story wise, the way she constructed it. I love the fact that Vanessa's surname is Y. It's like, why was she picked? Why did she get manipulated? Why did this happen? And there's all of these questions. Why did she feel that way? Why does she do what she does? Constantly asking questions, why? And I found it so fascinating that the teacher is Mr. Strain, how he's a strain on her life. And it also makes me think of stain, that mark on that just won't go away on her life. And he's only ever referred to by his first name, I think a handful of times at most, at absolute most. Other than that, he's Mr. Strain throughout the entire book. So it's that that deficit thing that she recognizes. He's always Mr. Strain when she met him, and he will always be that person. I just find that so fascinating. And her use of referring to poems, to novels, to songs throughout, which is so vivid. Like Bruce Springsteen gets a song in Bruce Springsteen gets referred to in this book, which my parents love Bruce Springsteen. Me and my sister were brought up on Bruce Springsteen's songs, so he's like kind of person in our family. And then she reads this lyric and she sees it in a really disgusting way, and she's like, oh god, that is vile, that's disgusting. And I never saw that lyric that way. And it's so interesting how she breaks things down. Song lyrics, poems, stories, through Vanessa's manipulated understanding of the world. And oh god, I just wanted to give Vanessa a big hug. I know that she's probably going to have issues for the rest of her life. I know that she might not trust another person ever again. But I know that she's free. I know that she understands now, and for that she's a hero. She's wonderful. If you have come across Taylor Swift's recent album Evermore, because she released 2 in 2020, Folklore and then Evermore, which me, Laura and Sarah absolutely adored. We love both albums. There is a track on Evermore called Tolorate It, and as soon as I started reading this book, I thought of it. And I sent Laura and Sarah a message going, I've got Taylor's song, Tolorate It, stuck in my head whilst reading this book. And my sister's like, oh my God, you have no idea how accurate that is. And my God, it really is. And my sister was saying that Kate loves Taylor's music. And so I was just a bit like, the way in which Taylor writes stories, the way in which Kate wrote this story are kind of similar as well. It was just, I kept on thinking of Taylor Swift. And funnily enough, in Folklore, there is a character called Inez referred to in Betty, and Inez has her own song in the track August. And Inez is a character in this book. And I was just a bit like, oh my God, it was crazy. And I just kept on hearing the song Betty and August whenever her name got referred to. It was quite funny. But yeah, I might actually put a link to Tolorate It in the description below so you can hear it. And the tone of Tolorate It is kind of like the tone of this book as well. Obviously, this book is darker and it's got a lot more weight to it, but generally the gist of what it's about, it really encaptured it. Yeah, I'm still processing this. I know I'm going to feel this way for quite a while, at least for the next few days, I think. It is completely consuming. It's completely harrowing, it's completely gut-wrenching, and it is so important, this book. And to say that this is a debut novel, I couldn't fault it. I couldn't. I am so glad that Kate decided to take 20 years to write this book, because you needed it. If, as I said to my sister, say she had a big first book and this was her second book and she wrote it in like the period of like 2 years, it would not be the same book as this is, because of that time. You can tell the time that has been taken, the reflections of that she talks about. You need the time in order to make the material work, and I am so happy that she did that. So happy. It's disturbing. It's hard. It's a lot. But it's so important, this book. I'm not going to do a reading because I found that anything that I had marked in the book was either, when I'm looking back on things, having got to the end of the book, were either one, too graphic, and as I said, this is a triggering book. I'm not going to trigger anyone. I don't want to do that. So I was like, right, those get thrown out. And the one that I could have read was a scene that was actually my sister's favourite scene throughout the whole book, and it's got nothing to do with strain or anything, but it's a fantasy of what could be for Vanessa. And it's so heartbreaking. I know I'm going to cry. So I'm not going to put you through that. So yeah, I'm gonna finish there. But I think it's fair to say that it's had an effect on me. And thankfully, you know, I've never been through anything like Vanessa has gone through. I've never had any experience with that. I don't know anyone who has been through that either, or at least that I'm not aware of, because obviously people may have been and not told. You know, so this subject is something that has never come into my life personally. But I think it's important that these things are discussed and that it teaches people of these things. And this is going to stick with me for a while. This really, really is. And so yeah, so the boldest thing I need to get across is that I would class this as a trigger book. And if anyone has gone through this kind of thing, be aware of it before you pick up this book. Obviously, if you want to read it, then that's you know, entirely up to you. But it is graphic, and it's a lot to deal with. So I hope anybody who's watching this who isn't aware that it's a trigger book, it really is. And I want you guys to feel comfortable, if you have been that, to know that when you're possibly debating if you want to read it or not. So there you go. So anyway, those are my thoughts on My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So let's ask the questions as I do each time. Would I read this again? Yes. I really can't read it again now. Right, as in right now. I need, it's like Handmaid's Tale. I'll go back to Gilead, but you've got to give me time. You've really got to give me time, and the same with this book. Yeah, I would. Would I read any more of Kate Elizabeth Russell's work? Yes. She's writing her second book right now. I have absolutely no idea what it's about. I don't know if anybody does, because I haven't looked it up. But yeah, I'd read more of her stuff. I'd be interested to see what she writes next. If it's going to be a similar subject, if it's going to be a completely different subject, a completely different genre even. We don't know, but we'll just have to see. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, but I would make it very clear how this is a triggering book, how harrowing it is, but how important it is. So there we go. It's so well constructed, so dark, so sinister, so powerful, and so important. So there we go. My thoughts on My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Have you read this book? Let us know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to you. I'll let you decide. I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell. Now, when I announced that I was reading this book, I couldn't remember if I'd read one of Maggie's books before. And then I realised right after I published it, yes, I have. I read The Disappearing Acts of Esme Lennox about, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. This is like a third or fourth book since then, so it'd be interesting to see about this. But yeah, I'm very excited to read Hamnet, and I'll be back with my thoughts on it as soon as I am done, which hopefully will only be a week and not 2 weeks. We'll see how long it takes me to get over this. But yeah, I'll be back with my thoughts on that as soon as I'm done. All right, guys, bye.